Kryptonaut Podcast.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm Mark Storrs. And with me as always is...
I'm Chris.
And...
Rob Morphy.
I can't change the opening of our show because when I do, it sounds weird.
Yeah, it was a little odd.
It was.
Because usually you say, what, hello?
Should we try it again?
Yeah,
let's keep this one in so the listeners at home can hear it.
Let's just do it from the top because you really just threw me off my game.
Hello and welcome to the Kryptonaut Podcast. I'm Mark Storrs and with me as always is...
Hi, Mark. I'm Chris.
And...
I'm relieved. That went really well.
Sound better, right?
So much better.
Every time I listen to the opening of the show, I'm like, God damn it, I got to change something up. But then when we do, don't work.
You just fuck up the rhythm.
People don't like change.
No, they don't. It's terrible. Doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us for this 6th episode. As always, rate and review Apple iTunes and the Apple Podcast apps. Helps us out greatly.
Bunches.
Our numbers, we're not going to do too much inside baseball here, but our numbers are looking really good, guys.
Sweet.
Looking
You're
really
welcome.
good.
You're welcome, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Thanks for having
I
me.
think that we're thanking the listeners, right? Too?
No, you're thanking me.
No, we're
I'm
thanking Chris.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chris.
Chris is responsible.
There's no numbers without me.
That's true.
There's no
That is
recording
true.
without Chris.
That is
Unbelievable.
true.
We're just talking to a
Unbelievable.
wall without him. It's sad.
Follow us on the social medias, the Instagrams, the Twitters, the Facebooks. Before we get started, we are going to do some quick reviews from the Apple iTunes and the Apple Podcast apps. So kicking it off here, we've got Shotgun Badger.
Ha! I love
Coming
that.
in with
Excellent.
a 5-star review. Perfect balance. Like many others in this kind of community, I find myself often hard-pressed to find a source of stuff that can balance between a few people just kind of talking about stuff they heard and actual research into the topic. It's really hard to find a podcast that can balance the banter and the study, but these guys nail it perfectly. If you're a hardcore true believer, a skeptic who just wants to check stuff out, or anything in between, this is for sure worth a listen.
Oh,
Hell yeah.
so
Hell
nice.
yeah.
Shotgun Badger.
Thank
there
you,
it
Shotgun
is.
Badger.
Next one here is Wie Wunderbar.
Oh,
God.
I don't remember too much German, but I think that means wonderful.
I think you're right.
I think it does, possibly. Simply the best 5-star review. You guys are amazing. Most of these episodes have me constantly looking over my shoulder at work. It's hilarious when the conversation veers off topic as well. Hot Pockets aren't that bad. This podcast,
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you, kind sir.
This podcast is simply the best, and will have you bursting out in laughter in no time. P.S. Chupacabra.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
There
But
it
are you
is.
talking vintage Chupacabra or that new
Well,
mangy,
you
hairless
got to
Texas
start
mutt?
with the original. And
Yeah,
then,
you got to go to Puerto Rico. I need my spike-back kangaroo bat-winged mayhem-making monster.
There you go.
Not these goddamn hairless
Dogs.
canines.
All right, the
Spit
last
on that.
last review here, we got, let's see, J.L. Stone. Absolutely delightful 5-star review.
Oh,
I found this podcast searching for an in-depth look at Frank Shaw's Gargoyle, the NASA Gargoyle incident, because it was one of the more curious and interesting stories I've read in a while, and I was not disappointed. I enjoyed every moment of this episode, and it got me hooked until I had listened to the entire catalog of episodes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right? There you go.
Mm-hmm.
For ease, I listen mainly on YouTube because I am disabled and what little earnings I make are through commissioned art online. So I spend a lot of time at the computer and I'm always looking for something to listen to while I work on my designs.
Oh, that's wicked.
I have found that this series really keeps me engaged and interested. And focused on my work. The banter between the guys reminds me of sitting out on the front porch talking with my brothers on balmy Indiana nights. We have a lot of cryptid stories here as well as local ghost stories there. Indiana is full of woodlands and wetlands, and there's a lot of fuel for stories. I actually saw Bigfoot once with a couple of other people, but I digress.
Oh, that's awesome,
And then
too.
he finishes up here with, on a more sentimental note, I developed schizophrenia in my early 20s, and part of my disorder is that I have an irrational fear of monsters. Listening to this podcast has actually helped me think of those things more critically and more scientifically, and has helped me, if not get over the fear, at least my paranoia about it isn't as high as it was once before. I hope that doesn't sound too crazy, but I really do enjoy all the things you do and look forward to listening to more amazing stories from around the world. And there is a P.S. Rob's right. Plants have feelings, so there.
Thank you. Confirmation.
No,
Finally.
you're both wrong.
Yeah, sadly, you're both wrong.
Yeah, no.
But hey, it's cool to hear that we're helping you get over a little bit of something that you got going on there with fear of some monsters and whatnot. So, yeah, no, it's great to hear that we're helping
that's
people
all.
like
Yeah,
that.
I love
totally.
it. That's
Totally.
the kind of stuff that, I mean, it totally warms my heart, like completely. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, totally. No,
and
that's great.
also, I'm dying to check out some of his artwork.
Yeah,
Because as soon as I heard he was a freelance artist, I'm like, Oh, because then I have to have that dual thing going. That I'm a huge fan and can't wait to see it. I'm also a competitive son of a bitch, and I can't wait to hate you if you're better than me.
Oh,
So it's going to be one of those dichotomies.
Are you trying to say that we might have a new artist for the KryptonautPodcast.com?
If you guys, I don't know, drop me off on a street corner somewhere, leave me for dead.
Years of friendship for naught.
Toothless like Mel Water.
I will
We're going to drop you off right outside. Directly just outside
I
the door.
will not find my way back. I get lost easily.
Don't
Yeah.
worry, Rob. After we dump you, I will continue to make money off of you.
I
So
appreciate
thank you.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
but
much.
yeah, on a serious note, JL Stone, shoot us an email on the socials or our website and send us a link to your work. And if you are on our Facebook page, feel free to post your stuff up on our Facebook page. And that goes for any listeners out there that work on any cool art or whatever. Post it up. We love seeing it.
Absolutely.
Doesn't have to be something that you're doing, Kryptonaut related. Just any of your work. Doesn't matter. We're all artists. We're all here doing our thing. So post it up. We love checking it out. And this week, things are going to take a little bit of a twist.
Mm-hmm.
Because we may have been on a kick with an Octoman,
Yep.
a Wakamako Catman,
Catman.
a Mossman.
Dump cat for life.
This week we're talking about the Kinderhook Blob.
Indeed, we are.
Blobman? Is it a Blobman?
It could be a blob.
It could be a Blobman.
Do you know the
Blobman.
Manta Man of Chile came within a hair's breadth of
Yeah.
becoming this week's pod? But Mark said,
jeez.
we got to cut this man shit out. We're not Marvel Comics circa 67, douche. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, fair enough. Manta
No
Man,
way.
back on the shelf.
Manta Man's gotta
Kinderhook
wait.
Blob, your time is now. Shine,
I thought
buddy.
we were just, it was to introduce our new toy line that's coming out next year.
Oh, that'd be a sweet
Masters
toy
of the
line.
Universe toy
That'd be
line.
a
Oh my!
sweet
I
toy
would
line.
love it.
They already have a Mossman, though.
How?
It's okay. We can
Because
have to
with
change it.
3D printers, we should be able to design and make our own toys.
Totally.
Oh, that's something we really have to look into. All right.
The Kinderhook Blob. During the 1960s, no less than 6 eyewitnesses claimed to have had encounters with a floating, ghostly, blob-like creature that was so intimidating 2 armed men fled from it in mortal terror.
Yes.
Nice. Terror.
The strange tale of this unique apparition begins in the forest surrounding Kinderhook, New York, a small town whose name literally translates to Children's Corner in the language of the original Dutch settlers. So we're in good old Children's Corner, New York, not far from a lake of the same name. That is Kinderhook Lake.
Sure.
Okay, we're all from New York. Have any of us heard of this or been there?
I have not.
No,
not
Nor
me
have I
either.
been.
This is
I mean, I
probably-
heard about it as soon as I read this account
Right.
some years ago, but I've never been
Well,
there.
New York's a big state, and we don't travel a lot, so there you go.
It's true.
Yeah.
We're homebodies.
Well, you know.
It's not.
Yeah,
oh my God, I broke
he's
Mark,
kind of
and I don't
cracking
know
up.
how.
No, yeah, we never leave. We're like,
No, we're shut-ins, pretty much.
other states? What's outside the borders?
I'm not even
Probably,
sure.
well, we've confirmed Canada. And
I heard
we've
there's
confirmed New Jersey.
other states.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But that's what I was supposed to say. I'm not
true.
convinced.
Because these
I mean,
stories
I've flown
happen
to other states,
in
but
other
I don't
states.
know. Maybe I just flew like
Did
15
you, though?
minutes in a circle, landed
Did
in
you?
the same place. They changed it. The
Did they
decor.
knock your ass out on the plane
Yeah.
and just make you see shit when you landed?
Facts?
Dark country.
Facts and science. Accounts I've come across regarding this anomalous animal, for lack of a better appellation, are at times contradictory, and some of the dates are frankly difficult to confirm. Nevertheless, what we do know for sure is that the initial event involving this undulating being occurred in 1962. The first report of this creature comes to us from author and New York State Library genealogist Bruce Hallenbeck. When Hallenbeck was a 10-year-old boy, he and his cousin were cavorting in the woods behind his parents'
Oh,
house.
boy.
Yes, you're welcome. When they both saw something they would never forget.
You know they're back there smoking cigarettes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do.
Puffing-
Steal Dad's butt.
puffing
go back
butts
there
in the
and
backyard.
cool smoking butts, dude.
10 and 7. That's what you did.
Yeah,
62.
exactly.
Hallenbeck would record this bizarre event years later in 1992 in a book he wrote with Paul and Robert Bartholomew as well as William Brand titled Monsters of the North Woods. According to Hallenbeck, when I was 10 years old, this is 1962, I was up in the woods behind our house with my cousin Chari. I'm not sure if Chari is a boy or girl. I don't know what that means, but it's Chari, who was then age 7. We both heard this really high-pitched whistling noise. The children looked in the direction of the strange sound and were shocked to see what the author later described as a white object peering at me from behind a nearby pine tree.
Intrigue.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. A white object.
Weird.
Just peeking around a tree.
Strange.
Object.
Yeah.
That's just the. Can you use a vaguer word
I know.
than fucking object?
I saw stuff looking at me from a place.
I am quoting directly from
I
his
know.
book, so that
That's
was his
true.
choice.
That's true.
Hallenbeck would clarify that statement. I say peering, but in fact, it had no eyes that I could see. Wisely choosing caution over curiosity, the frightened cousins beat a hasty retreat back to Hallenbeck's parents' home. Following the children's encounter, this evolutionary enigma would maintain a low profile for 2 years until 1964. On the evening in question, an unnamed man was taking a leisurely hike through the woods when he saw something he later described as a big white blob, gliding in an unnatural fashion down the hill toward him.
It's not what you want to see coming down the hill
And
towards
this
you.
thing, you know,
So what
is gliding in a
That's what I
natural
mean.
fashion?
How do
Yeah.
you? Where's the comparison between
So
natural blob
what
gliding?
things do we know that glide? Like kites,
Birds.
birds when they're not flapping their wings.
Love.
Love glides.
Love glides.
Yeah.
Yep, we know that.
Yep.
So unlike love birds or kites, apparently is this like a herky jerky glide? Is this just
Maybe it's like Aladdin licking his carpet. You know, when he's
like
coming.
just
yeah,
like undulating
a-
over the terrain,
Sort of. Maybe.
but still always above it?
Yeah.
Maybe. All we know is unnatural. It's
I
unnatural.
just don't know
as
what that
fuck.
means either. Yeah.
I mean, if it's blobs, I guess are natural, correct?
If I'm in the woods
Are they?
and I see
don't know.
no, schmoos aren't real. I mean,
Aren't they?
or maybe they
Oh my
are.
God! I just said, are they?
Oh,
Aren't
exactly.
they?
Are they
What-
or aren't
now,
they?
what were Gloop and Gleep from the Herculoids?
They were globs. They were blobs. Or
And
globs.
then
I didn't know the technical term
Flintstones
for
had
them.
schmoos, right?
Oh,
Or
I don't
it was
know.
definitely
Right, the
Hanna
shmoo.
Barbera.
He had like the
I don't know.
mustache, or
He
whatever.
had the mustache, and he looked basically like a really malformed dick and balls,
Yeah.
but all white
I'm
with
sure
eyes.
there's things. I'm dick and balls aside. I'm sure that there's things in the ocean that are like blobs, like a jellyfish is kind of like a blob.
Well, there's globsters and weird
Yeah.
gutsy things that wash up on shores that are called
Yeah.
globsters
so
because
nothing
they're
on
so
land.
decomposed.
Like there's a blob in Chris's backyard.
And, well,
Be
floating
weird.
land blobs, I think we can all agree, are pretty fucking uncommon.
So I think that we've determined as a group that it's unnatural.
So what makes me curious is what was the natural thing that it would have compared to initially
Well, that was the original question.
Well, this
What-
was 62. It was a different time.
when things naturally glided
Yeah,
everywhere.
exactly.
Except this one fucking thing.
yeah.
We had a bus full of kids gliding through the road.
was a better
just
time.
nature taking its course.
I know.
Floating just the way Mother Nature
Deer's
intended.
gliding amongst the skunks.
Pepperidge
Jesus
Farm remembers
supports.
we all glided naturally. Whippersnappers are
That
their
would be the best Pepperidge Farm
newfangled gliding. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Anywho,
The sight of the surging spectral entity frightened the fellow so much that in an effort to escape the floating fiend, he claimed to have leapt over a pond that measured 6 feet across.
I mean, that's not.
I mean, it's impressive.
It's a. I
mean,
think.
6
I
feet.
think. Look it.
wait, the blob did?
No,
No,
the
the
guy
dude
did
did.
making his escape.
Oh man, that's like Jackie Chan territory. I don't know, man.
6 feet.
I know it's pretty.
I think I can do 6 feet.
I don't know.
I couldn't.
I'm not
I
at-
couldn't
I
do
am-
12 inches.
I am built like a box that has no arms, so I can. I'm not athletic at all, but I think I could probably do like 6
I can't
feet.
successfully walk 6 feet without taking a break.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
about
no,
jumping.
yeah, at my peak, I probably could have done 6 feet, but
Yeah,
probably-
but you're
dude,
but
if
you're
we get
catching
you
the
back
dirt
in
on the
training-
edge, and you're going to slip into that fucking pond 9 times out of 10.
nah, I know.
You're going to parkour it and then end up ass over tea kettle in the water. But this man's so terrified, the adrenaline just thrust him over this unnaturally long body of water.
Oh, this large puddle.
This giant 6-foot pond.
That's not really. That's
Yeah,
not
is
a
it
big pond.
or a creek? I mean,
It's-
what fucking
it's a-
pond is
it's-
6 feet
ponds
wide?
aren't- yeah,
No, it's a mud puddle.
It has to be.
Basically, it's not a pond.
It's got, I hope it's a creek and it was just reported.
Oh,
here.
it's more than likely a
All
creek
right.
or like a little.
Yeah.
While we might not know. Sorry.
Yeah, 'cause
Jesus
it's just a big
Christ.
ass puddle. It's not a pond.
It is. While we might not know the name of this amateur long jumper, what we do know is that the frightened fellow managed to muster up the courage to return to the scene of his sighting, this time with a friend in tow. The anonymous duo armed themselves respectively with a shovel and a pitchfork. Those are standard go-to weapon items you can find in almost any shed or garage. I
Yeah,
would
weapons.
think. Yeah. The anonymous duo armed themselves respectively with a shovel and a pitchfork and stalked back into the forest ready to confront the hovering wraith.
Good choice of weapon.
Yeah, you know, if you don't have
Yeah.
access to shotguns, machetes, other various sundry items like throwing
Yeah.
stars,
Brass knuckles,
a pitchfork
throwing knives,
and a shovel will do.
a K-bar.
I mean, that's classic
Oh,
mob
K-bar.
and chasing the Frankenstein monster 1930s Universal
Oh yeah.
stalking.
That's
gear.
weapons.
You can keep things at a distance, which is good.
Absolutely.
Keep them at a distance.
So, armed with their pitchfork and shovel, the two went back into the woods, hoping to find this thing. Well, I imagine that the guy that first saw them was probably still a little bit intimidating. His friend, you have to assume, was skeptical as fuck.
Yeah, because if you come to me and you're like, dude, I saw this blob, I jumped over a 6-foot mud puddle, we need to get weapons and go take care of this thing, I'm going to be like, all right, Rob.
You'd go with me.
Yeah,
because you're a friend.
Yeah, totally.
But you're not going to go
that you're
there.
drunk or you're having a psychotic break. But
Yeah,
I would do it.
That's not true at all.
No.
Because, and you know what? Here I'm going to throw a little ballyhoo at our friendship. If either of you guys came to me with some serious shit you saw in the woods, I would 100% take you at your word. And I would go back there fully expecting, not necessarily to see a fucking blob ghost, but that there's something there that made you think you saw that.
So you're a better friend to me than I am to you. That's fine.
I just wanted to make that clear to our listeners.
You're a better friend.
That I'm the guy you come to in a pinch. I'm the friend you need when monsters are loose.
That is true.
Footloose and fancy free.
Don't come to
No,
me.
I know. I've got a few phone calls from him, like at night.
Me?
No,
No.
from him.
Yeah.
Like it'll be like 10:30. I get a call from Bob. I'm like, oh man, that's it. This can't be good. Because late night phone calls are always awful. But it's like, dude, I just saw some shit, man. Like,
You don't call me.
Well,
Wait, you know what? We've already established that.
That's not, first off,
happened
now
in a
I'm
while,
stammering. You have a family and a wife, and people have to get up early. Secondly,
And then I'll get on you about your mental health.
This-
Like, Robert, you need to get your life together.
I
Your
know.
shit is fucked up. We're going to get you a therapist. Don't worry.
I need Chris to come out and confirm the crazy shit I see sometimes.
that's
in the
true.
sky.
I'm always not doing anything.
Do we have a system of 3 where, like, you experience it, you call Chris, and then he confirms and then calls me?
I'd like to think so.
Well, let's do that.
It's never ever really
We're
happened
going to
that way.
start running
but-
tests this week.
All right.
Get ready. It's like a fire drill. It's a kryptonite drill.
Fair.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, Rob, make sure you see something.
I know.
Yeah, keep
So-
your eyes
Well,
open.
I'll at least fake one.
All right, good.
Kryptonite fire drill. Jesus Christ. Okay. Pitchfork, shovel, 2 guys,
We're
no
doing it.
names,
All
woods.
right, let's do it.
Without warning, the once skeptical cohort froze in his tracks and his face became as white as a sheet. The petrified man silently pointed ahead toward a white shape, quote unquote, which appeared to be defying the laws of gravity by maneuvering through the high branches of the trees.
the
So not
trees.
just
So wait.
unnaturally gliding over the ground.
Now it's in the tree.
Now this shit's flat up
Huh.
in the fucking tree line,
Okay.
doing some shit.
Weird.
Both friends, suddenly drained of courage, dropped their provisional weapons and sprinted in the opposite direction of the thing.
Never drop your weapons.
I know, that's dumb. That's every horror film teaches you that. Or every asshole that like throws their gun when it's out of bullets, like it's not a $400 fucking tool that you can use as soon as you get more bullets.
You can still
Or you
pistol
could
whip
just,
somebody.
well, yeah, you
with
can
it.
just smash someone in the
Yeah,
skull with
like
it.
that's the whole point of a
It
pistol
always
whip.
infuriates me when I see that in
That's
a
a
movie.
pistol whipping.
Old
There you
fashioned.
go.
An old timey pistol whipping.
But why would you just toss it anyway? Like you haven't engaged it yet. You don't know what's going to
Yeah,
happen.
No, that's what I
Unless maybe
read
they're
about,
thinking, well,
and
maybe
my thought is, the fuck are you doing?
Yeah,
or
like, I don't
maybe
get it.
they're assuming that it was a pitchfork and a shovel, so it's going to be like too cumbersome to run with. I've never ran with a pitchfork or a shovel.
Well, I imagine it's
it
going
can't
to
be
weigh you
like,
down to a
a
certain
bit.
degree,
They're
but
not, like,
not
super heavy.
dramatically.
Yeah.
Or are you like even more complicated in your fear? Like it's going to think we want to attack it. We must look as vulnerable as possible
It's
so it
not
doesn't
good,
attack
man.
us first.
Not good. Face
Either
it.
way, it doesn't
Yeah.
make a lick of sense that you
No.
drop some shit.
No.
Your fucking dad's tools, almost certainly, and they're not yours.
Dude, Dad's going to be so pissed.
He's not going to be happy.
No.
He's going to need the fucking pitchfork for the hay.
Yeah. Then he's
what
gonna
else
take it
do you
out
use
on. He's gonna
pitchforks
take it
for?
out on Mom, and then it's gonna be
Fuck
Christmas
oh.
is ruined.
Devil
Always.
stabbings.
Yeah, stab the devil.
When we stab the devil, of course. Some say that the third reported encounter with this creature also occurred in 1964, while others testified that it was 14 years later in 1978. This is part of the strange paper trail that is left in the wake of this creature. Regardless of the year, this tertiary run-in happened in the late afternoon and involved 2 youthful campers named Barry Scott and Russell Lee, who were both 14 years old at the time of the incident. According to their
I don't know about Barry
testimony,
Scott.
you don't know about Barry Scott? You don't trust him?
2 first names.
That's shady. Well, Russell Lee, that's 2 first names too.
Oh, all right.
So you just don't trust these boys at all.
I don't know yet. We'll see.
All right, fair enough.
Questionable.
According to their testimony, the first sign that something was amiss in the forest was when both Scott and Lee heard something tramping. That's a quote.
Tramping.
Tramping. Heavy steps.
Okay.
Crunching in the
Being a tramp
undergrowth.
in the woods.
Tramping
Yeah,
around the woods.
tramping.
Yeah,
Tramping around the woods. Old timey. Down the wooded hill outside of their tent. How a creature that was able to float can also tramp is arguably the biggest mystery in this fucking case.
I mean, it's It's described as floating, and it's a blob.
It's floating,
but
gliding,
the first thing
hovering.
he said was gliding, and that's kind of a weird word because that still needs a surface.
Right.
Like in my mind, on
Yeah,
the
you're right.
ground, gliding. I
But
mean,
the-
yeah,
but-
you can hang
well,
glide in
you
the
can hang
air,
glide, yeah.
but I'm not picturing this thing on the air.
The way I was imagining it was sort of like what Mark was saying earlier with the Aladdin's carpet analogy, where I saw it like kind of following
like
the contours of the land, but
yeah.
like maybe 7 inches above it.
like anti-grav.
Yeah, see, I didn't picture that at all. I just pictured it like smoothly, just it's moving in a way fast over those shapes, but it shouldn't be
Right.
moving that smoothly.
Like it's kind of like an anti-grav.
You know what I mean? That's what it means by
Yeah.
gliding. It's
Well,
just
that-
smoothly going over everything way.
Absolutely, because that's what
That's
I'm
what I
imagining
pictured.
too. Because here's the thing:
Not
so
in the
far
air.
we've had it described as a blob, and we're gonna get another couple of descriptions very soon, and that is going to change things a little bit. But the way it moves is like, to me, is it when they say it's undulating or rippling? Is it like, say, a flat sheet? Like it's like CGI'd over, like moving over rough terrain, like
Right, or is
That's
it
kind of more like what I pictured.
or is it something?
Is it like
domed?
like a 4-foot blob, or it's like a big hunky like squishy dome?
I think the answer is it's both.
Okay,
Depending on who's seeing it. But let's get back to Lee and Scott's sighting, because this is kind of interesting. All right, so they hear it tramping. They peek outside their tent, the boys, and saw something that their young minds were utterly unprepared to deal with. The thing they described was a white, hovering, quote-unquote, being that was virtually identical to the creature seen by both Hallenbeck, Chari, and the 2 unnamed men, except in this case the being looked less like an amorphous blob and more like a prototypical ghost. Like bedsheet, old-fashioned
Yeah.
ghost.
the evolution of the ghost.
Both teens agreed that the thing they saw floated more than walked. So a weird combination of hovering and then occasionally touching the ground, if it's doing both, even though it floats more. But each boy took from the experience 2 unique images. Barry, arguably the more pragmatic of the two, saw what he described as a bell-shaped white being. So we got that image.
Bell-shaped.
Bell-shaped.
Oh, wait a minute, Chris.
No, I know what it is.
All right. just
Russell, on the
checking.
other hand, verbally illustrated something that looked more like the Virgin Mary.
You could not be more farther apart than a Bell or the Virgin Mary.
Not so.
Really?
As an
Oh, 'cause
attendee
of-
of Catholic
Dude,
school.
I don't know. Like
because of the
sometimes the
cloak.
shape, looks kind of.
Oh, you know what?
Let me read this part here.
I recant my statement.
With the Virgin Mary often being depicted as having flowing white robes, perhaps the boys' descriptions are not really all that dissimilar. And I think that's probably the case.
No, I've seen plenty
now,
there.
who knows? Now, maybe, was it Lee? Lee might have come from a deeply Catholic family. Maybe he went to Sunday school. Maybe he went to church every Sunday. Maybe he went to parochial school like Chris and I did. Maybe he was indoctrinated in these images, so when he sees a flowing white thing, his mind goes to Virgin Mary.
Right.
While Barry is like,
It's a
that's
bell.
that's a fucking crazy white
Right.
rippling bell.
No, but you're right, though. I can see how describing it as the Bell of the Virgin Mary, I
Well,
can see how that would be.
Well, maybe.
Shape
I mean,
alone.
bells are kind of wider than.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, a being is longer.
Well, if you imagine like the old statues of the Virgin Mary, I'm sure you remember from the schools where her arms are
Absolutely.
extended and the robes are going down.
Sure.
It would have a narrow top, broaden out at the shoulders, extend further at the arms, and then kind of drape straight down.
That could
That
be.
could be bell-like.
Right.
I mean, I
Right.
know I'm grasping at straws here.
I can see how he would get the description, though. I
But-
wanted
or
to shit.
maybe-
Listen, I wanted to shit on it, and you know what? I did, and I was wrong.
Maybe it's
And
a
I'm
biblical
apologizing.
apparition. You don't need to apologize.
I will
Yeah, no.
never.
Shit. All right.
Don't you worry, Robert.
All right. So Mary gave him a message. What was the fucking
Okay,
message?
so yeah, what did Mary
it's
Jeez.
going to be about nukes. It always is. You got to go back to Fatima again.
Mary does not like nukes.
No, this blob said nothing.
Oh, well, shit.
Whatever the thing may or may not have been, moments after they saw it, the rippling beast disappeared into the dense thicket, leaving the perplexed teens too terrified to remain in the woods. So again, gut reaction, get the fuck out of Dodge. Unfortunately, lacking a photograph or even a decent eyewitness sketch of the Kinderhook Blob, it's difficult to even attempt to classify what this possibly phantasmagoric being might have been. At the very least, we can all agree that this unclassified creature was a UFO, and that it was both flying and clearly unidentified, only this time the O would probably stand for organism rather than object. Perhaps the most intriguing question regarding this seemingly innocuous creature is why does it seem to inspire a nearly universal reaction of terror in those who have seen it? Why is the first reaction of all observers to simply run away from this entity? Is it simply a fear of the unknown, or does it indicate that the witnesses intuitively sense that there is something malevolent lurking deep in the Kinderhook woods? And these are the questions we're going to tackle right now, gentlemen.
Evil.
Is it pure evil, or are these guys just pusses who
Well,
see something weird and want to get the fuck out? Which, by the way, I respect. I'd probably feel the same way.
Okay. I mean, there still is every chance these are not the same thing.
I was thinking that when we were going over the descriptions, because the first one's coming down a hill gliding, the second one's in a tree, the third one's a bell, or Mary, mother of Jesus.
It's either a Bell or Mary. There's no other option.
Bell or Mary, mother of Jesus,
Yeah.
Lord and Savior.
But like I said, the description of the first one is, I mean, it does say glide, and then they saw it in the tree, and they still didn't necessarily, it was a vague description of it in the tree. I still pictured it kind of on the tree, but still moving in a weird way, not hovering per se. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where the second one, clearly, it appeared to be hovering.
If
Yes.
this was 3 separate occasions, I mean, they're
let's-
similar.
No, well, it seems like the first two, it seems like it could be the same
let's
thing.
just do a quick review of what the people claim to have seen,
Okay.
and that way we can break it down a little more accurately. The first one by Bruce Hallenbeck and his cousin Chari from 1962. There was a high-pitched whistling noise. The only time I think
that was mentioned in any of the accounts.
like a sound associated
Yeah.
with it besides tramping was indicated. And what they saw was a white object peering from behind a pine tree.
because that was the first
Yeah,
one.
now you-
So I did an illustration of basically a amorphous white blob kind of peeking around a pine
Right.
tree because that's all you've got.
That's all he's saying.
But the fact that it seems to be half concealed behind a tree,
Mm-hmm.
giving the impression, at least to a 10-year-old boy, that he's being looked at by
Right.
it, even though there's no clear indication of facial features or eyes or anything like that. So the first one, no floating, no gliding, not in the high trees, just
just
at the
a
trunk of a
white
tree peeking
thing.
around the corner, kind of like an ET moment where like the cute little amorphous blob from another dimension peeks out and sees other kids playing. Like, can we be friends? Can we cover all these bonds that separate us and just find a way to just play kickball? You know,
Yeah.
just do our thing, Spielberg style, 82. Come on. And so that's what
Or
that
maybe
is.
because this is white, maybe it's that when E.T. turned into a white turd and died.
Oh my God, that's the saddest thing that ever happened on a silver screen.
That's what happens. You
All
turn
right.
into a white turd and you die.
Then we go to 1964.
Jeez, all right. Well,
I don't want to bring it down.
And this is
Spoiler
when
alert.
the direct quote from the unnamed man as a big white blob
Yeah.
was gliding in an unnatural fashion down a hill.
Again,
So you
it's
got a
just-
blob. So
Yeah,
if it's a
I-
blob, it's not flat. So there's something solid pile-like to
Well,
it, I
Right,
think.
and it's
Yeah, I
I
gliding
mean,
down
to be a
hill.
blob, you have to have some substance. No one ever sees a flat thing like a
No,
bed
it's
sheet
got to
flapping
have
in the
some
wind.
height to it at least.
Yeah,
A
So
little
it's
bit,
got
not completely
something
flat.
like that.
I can't get the idea of the blob from the Blob remake out of my
I
mind.
love the '88 Blob
It's what
remake.
it's all I'm
No.
thinking of is that.
As much as I think, and I'm going to digress only briefly, that John Carpenter's The Thing is arguably the greatest remake ever.
No, I think it is.
Okay, yeah.
I think a close second and third for me are the Chuck Russell Blob from '88 and the
Yeah.
David Cronenberg Fly from '86.
Oh, the fly is so skeevy.
So skeevy.
Oh.
Cronenberg, it's dirty as hell.
Yeah, it was gross.
But yes, I definitely think of blobs in those terms too.
But do we have to think outside of that box though?
Well, yeah, because it's not like that seems
No,
kind
It
of like
almost seems
tendrils
like
and
that's
weird
getting me
shit.
stuck. I'm getting stuck with that.
You got to
Like,
just think of it as a shape, like almost like scrubbing bubbles. Remember those foam bubbles from those
Right.
old fucking commercials with the
Yeah.
cartoon? I think they're called scrubbing bubbles. I don't know.
No, I know
like,
what you're talking about.
something like that.
But this thing, I mean,
white.
It's not like they're seeing it, and I mean, I guess they're not really describing it, but I'm assuming that it's solid.
Well, yeah, because
So it's not
because we don't get the
Yeah.
description that it's transparent.
right.
Well,
so
transparent.
it's
You
not
wouldn't see
like
it
it's not like a
translucent.
phantom or something.
Well, sometimes it moves like one. I mean, you can be phantom-esque and not necessarily be
So
translucent.
the first one, the counts from the first two counts, it feels like it's a thing, not
Yeah.
not a phantom or some, like it's a creature.
Right.
Absolutely.
It seems like a creature at least the way they
and
describe
the
it.
second part of the second account, which is when the guy returned with a buddy, all armed to the teeth with shovels
Yeah.
and pitchforks, they just describe it as a white shape. But this time, instead of being near the ground,
It's in a
gliding
tree,
down a hill,
fucking around branches.
it's darting around branches in a tree.
Yeah, that's fucking weird.
And then when we get to Lee and Scott's sighting, which is either 14 or 2 years later, depending on which sort, you get this weird
Yeah, things are different
other
here now.
kind of thing. Now, it's not surprising. Like, something that might look like a weird undulating blob could also, to a 14-year-old kid, look like a ghost. It really just depends on your perspective.
Right.
If you're inclined to believe in ghosts or the Virgin Mary or weird
Bells.
Yeah, but if you believe in bells,
If you believe in bells,
yeah,
the
then you
power
are
of
going to
bells.
see it as such.
Yeah.
But I actually, unlike what you guys were saying earlier, I think that these could very credibly be the exact same
No,
thing.
I know. They could be, but they also couldn't be. I was just
They also
pointing out.
couldn't be, yes.
Right.
There's no guarantee that it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's an expansive woods somewhere in New York State. It's probably not super vast. And maybe there's a breeding population of weird, free-floating white things. And possibly they all saw different ones. Or maybe there's just one.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a seagull stuck in a bed sheet just fucking around in the woods.
I mean, a pile of seagulls.
Scaring the shit out of everybody. It's floating. It's changing shape. It's undulating. It's a seagull.
Yeah.
It's a goddamn seagull.
It's a fucking sky rat wrapped in a fucking cloth.
Or is it?
All right.
Is it an atmospheric monster, which we dealt with a little bit
With
in the
the sky
gargantuan
spitter?
gliders,
Yep.
and we dealt with also in the sky spitter.
Yeah.
I mean, a white blobby floating, that could be a cloud-like
True.
thing. Now,
True.
it wasn't described as wispy and vaporous at any point.
Yeah, I feel like
No.
you would know that. I feel like if that's what the case.
But I just don't think you can completely rule out something that maybe belongs in the upper atmosphere somehow falling to Earth to die.
Yeah, I think you're only saying that because it's white.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's like really.
You're right. If it was fucking puce or whatever, is that even a
Yeah.
color? Is puce a
Puce?
fucking color?
Oh, I don't
I think you're.
know.
I was trying to say fuchsia, I think, at
I think
first.
it-
When you said puce?
You
Yeah,
can,
but-
yeah, you conflate.
I
You,
feel
you
like it is.
combine.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
definitely did.
yeah. I'm gonna
Fuchsia
Paint, I'm gonna.
Pygmalion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna paint my
I'm
living
pretty sure
room
that's not a color
puce.
either.
No, that's like Cirque du Soleil boots or something.
All right, either way, if it was a
Pygmalion. Jesus.
non-white, it's clearly a non-Euclidean monster.
I'm
as
going to be at
Chris has
Home
coined the
Depot
phrase.
tomorrow, and I'm going to go to the paint
Yeah.
department and say, yes, I need a gallon of puce paint.
Puce.
Puce paint.
Puce.
Otherwise,
We'll see what happens.
Puce.
Could you mix it with the Pygmalion, please?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'll text you guys and let you know.
Quarter Pygmalion.
I'm only an
Pronto.
artist. What am I supposed to know? Colors?
God.
For losers.
Whatevs.
I'm black and white. I'm an illustrator.
Yeah. What's up, Frank
Jesus.
Miller?
Fuck yeah.
Good era, Frank
Oh,
Miller.
I wish. I wish.
Good era.
Good era.
The best.
Hey,
All
Okay,
right.
so now, interestingly, though, the time between the accounts, how...
Well, it's
2 or
it's either
14.
this. This is the weird thing because I could not find a confirmed, 100% saying no. This is clearly what it is. The different
Right.
sources I found literally say that these things either happened in 62 and 64, or 62. Yeah, I'm sorry. The first one definitely happened in 62. The second one definitely happened in 64. The third one either happened in 64 as well,
Okay.
or 78.
All right, so there's not a consistent...
That I just can't confirm.
Right, okay, all right,
And
cool.
I haven't been able to track down Barry Scott or Russell Lee,
Okay, all right.
which you think will be pretty easy. I mean, Kinderhook's not huge, and we have their full names, but it's just not something
We are
I've been able to
terrible
do.
New Yorkers that we don't know where Kinderhook is.
It's somewhere in this fine state,
I mean, this state
the
is...
Empire
The
State.
state is big, but we should know where this is, and we don't.
It's somewhere between us and the Pennsylvania border,
It's true.
or Canada. I don't know if it's above us. It might be above us.
So, we want to start with... What should we start with?
Well,
I
let's
don't know.
Let's start
I,
talking
I,
about.
I believe they saw something.
No, I do too. They definitely saw something.
Whatever that is, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Whether or not it was a phantasmagorical creature of evil.
I do love that word.
Doesn't have to
That was a
be
great
evil. Oh, I love phantasmagorical too.
In the interest of full disclosure, I think we should also mention that there are also at least one Bigfoot sighting from the Kinderhook Woods area.
Really?
Yeah. And interestingly enough, it involves the Hallenbeck family again, which I know raises the hackles on all of our necks. We're like,
Wait a
oh
minute.
boy, when it's the same grouping.
They saw...
Someone in his family also saw a Bigfoot-like creature, a hairy hominid, I think, in the woods near Kinderhook Lake.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe they're just lucky.
I'm gonna say, I I'm just going to quote directly from Bruce Hallenbeck.
Okay.
Funnily enough, though, I'll get to that in a second. On September 24 of 1980, something showed up in my grandparents' backyard and started making some ungodly sound and scared everybody so much that my cousin came over with a shotgun and scared it off. He said it was walking on two legs. If you experience something you can't explain, you can either say my eyes and ears are playing tricks on me or there is something really out there. So
okay.
This was told to the syndicated television show PM Magazine, for anyone that's ancient as fuck and still remembers that crazy, well, it wasn't local, it was nationally syndicated, but it was low budget.
PM Magazine?
PM Evening Magazine. Do you remember that at all, Chris?
No.
It was so old. I remember it vaguely when I was a
What
kid.
was the magazine about?
It was just literally they would do local interest stories from around the country
Right.
and then broadcast it universally across said country.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall it offhand.
It doesn't really matter, but apparently his grandmother or somebody in his family, Bruce Hallenbeck's family, got some notoriety by talking about their Bigfoot encounter, completely removed from the Kinderhook Blob. At least one has to assume. I mean, if Schmooze and fucking Bigfoot are hanging out, but there's also a plethora of UFO sightings in that area too. Now, again,
Oh, are we crossing?
it's
The
hard. Is this
streams?
like one of those like Bridgeport triangles?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that
type
actually.
thing where,
yeah,
where
yeah.
you know it's sort of, or like the Ohio River Valley, which really seems like a nexus of truly unusual experiences
Yeah.
that might not be directly related but are astonishing because they happen in such a relatively narrow geographic space.
Right.
Possibly, but I feel like we have to weigh this all separately. It's easy once you hear that but people see UFOs literally across the globe and the continental
Yeah.
United States, everywhere. Now, I don't know of a sighting of a UFO directly correlating right when the Kinderhook Blob was seen.
Right.
So I don't
But
want
just-
to put too much on that because, of course, we all want to say, "Oh yeah, it seems foreign. It's an extraterrestrial. Case closed. Move on."
Right. This is just in the area.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
It doesn't mean that it's not possible. I mean, it would almost
was-
make sense in some ways that this thing would be an
Was
alien.
the UFO also spotted by the same family home?
That I'm not sure
Okay.
about.
All right. Just making sure.
It's just said
'cause-
that there were numerous UFOs reported around the same time as a large reddish-haired hairy hominid living in the same patch of woods. So, in 1980, in the autumn of 1980, there was a spate of UFO sightings and this Bigfoot sighting.
Okay.
Maybe it was all from Hallenbeck's family, or maybe only the Bigfoot sighting. I don't know.
Yeah.
But still, that's 2 years after the last confirmed sighting of the Kinderhook Blob,
All right.
or possibly 16 years after the last confirmed sighting, depending on which one's accurate.
So we got
Yeah.
a blob. We have 3 or 4 separate sightings of a blob.
yes.
Okay. And then we have a UFO,
A blob.
a Bigfoot, and a UFO.
Right. I'm going to not take those in consideration for the moment,
Okay. All right.
just because I just don't know any of the facts about those. So I can't
Okay.
really concede them. You threw them out there, which is good.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's good because
Full
the one,
disclosure.
the
But,
Bigfoot was spotted by one of the dudes that
If-
saw, or one of the family members
If-
of the guy that saw the blob.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
Well, he said a thing on 2 legs.
it's true. That's true.
But bear in mind,
If-
Hallenbeck saw the blob
Right.
Yes.
in 62.
Okay.
So that's 18 years before this red-haired
This thing, right.
Bigfoot, two-legged
Bipedal
yeah,
thing.
thing,
All right.
whatever the fuck it
All
is.
right.
Sure.
So I agree with Chris. Let's just table that.
Okay.
The UFOs, maybe that's more interesting because, again, this seems like an anomalous life form that might not be indigenous to Earth. We don't have things... We don't have
Okay, so
natural land blobs.
Land blobs, so, as far as I know, are not a thing.
No, I've never experienced one. I can't say I have.
I've never even seen a documentary
But-
on
No,
National
no.
I mean,
Geographic.
it is. There's a lake there, right?
There is a lake.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, Chris.
So, like,
The
there's
voice of reason and logic.
Which normally I'm not. I'd be like, fuck that, it ain't
So
real.
what
And I'm like,
are you saying?
I don't know.
So what could possibly?
I mean, blobbish thing comes from lake. That's a horribly non-scientific thing to say.
No, blobbish thing comes from lake is the most scientific thing
But-
that's ever been said on this pod.
just say it in a Russian
Yeah.
accent; it'll be that much sweeter.
That's true.
Okay. No, I like where you're going with this. Please continue.
Yeah.
I like it
I mean, who knows? It could have been some weird thing. I don't know where this was in
in relation to
to
the
lake. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, if there was just one sighting, I could almost think, and again, we are not scientists, so I'm just
Speak
pissing
for
in the wind.
yourself.
Fair enough. Mark's a scientist. The rest of us aren't. But if there was like a methane release or something that would cause like a foaming on top of the water, a solid foaming.
Actually, I know about this.
And it
Methane?
got methane.
Yep, swamp
and
gas.
And it
Yep.
got blown by a certain heavy breeze. So you see this floating bundle of white bubbles seeming to kind of bounce its way through the woods at a distance. I could see where you'd be frightened. I could see where you think it was animate. This to me, I feel like I'm Alan J. Hynek talking about swamp gas in Michigan, and I expect fully people to, ream me a new one.
No,
I'm not saying
dude.
saying that I 100% think this is the case. What I am saying is we really have to entertain the possibility that if at least one of these sightings might have been just a natural thing. If you literally do see, I know we were joking earlier about seagulls and bed sheets, but if someone's laundry got loose and it's blowing through the tops of trees and it seems to be herky-jerking around or it's caught on a branch you don't see, so it's moving back and forth in a way that seems controlled and intelligent, but isn't.
No,
But
sure.
The problem with both the methane lake foam theory and the fucking rogue laundry is that there are
I
fucking
like rogue laundry, though.
4 separate sightings.
Right.
Yeah, no, right.
And that all can't be explained
Rogue
by that.
laundry.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
first one really is. I mean, I guess it is a sighting, but like, I saw a white thing behind a tree.
Behind a tree, yeah.
I don't think it had eyes, but it looked like it was peering at me. So that's a tough one to.
That could be any animal
in some
on the
ways-
ground.
It's a.
In some ways, it's the most concrete because it's something peeking around a tree. Like, that's something an animal might do, or an intelligent creature that's afraid to make contact but curious.
No, it's definitely something that's possible, but it's the most vague. Like, you can't get anything off of
It
that.
could literally be anything behind that tree.
Except that it has to be white and faceless.
Right.
Was this during the day?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I think in nature we could find enough white things that we could put behind a tree. Whether it be a deer
I don't even
or
know what
a
to do with
bear
that.
Well, there's
or-
enough white things behind trees in this world.
Dismissed.
No, that's pretty much the funniest fucking thing ever. That is, you better not cut that. That's got to stay in.
I'll put it in the end of the episode as a spoiler.
Just-
All right,
there's enough white things behind trees in the world.
I'm really not thinking it's a rogue polar bear. Like, I don't know.
Oh no, I don't think it would be a rogue. I mean, there's no polar bears in New York.
But like I say, what? All right, so they said a blob-like thing. I think I'm quoting directly there.
Right.
A blob-like thing peeking out from behind a tree, but with no face.
I don't even know if they said blob-like.
They did say
They
something.
just said like a white thing behind the tree. I mean,
It was
No,
really
no,
vague.
let me-
obviously
go.
like albino deer, but you would know. I would hope you would know a deer if you saw it.
And I'll quote
It's true.
directly here. They heard the high-pitched whistle. Okay, you're right. This is very vague.
Yeah.
A white object.
Yeah, there you go,
peering at
object.
me from behind a nearby tree.
Yeah.
I say peering, but in fact it had no eyes that I could see.
Okay.
So, white object.
So
Chris is
something just
absolutely
went,
accurate.
woo.
It is the most. Could you imagine? Like, oh,
At that point, if
hey.
it was like light brown and it's a sunny day, I don't know if you could say that was white or not.
yeah.
You know what I mean? If that's really what it was just like, hey.
absolutely. That's fucking weird.
Yeah, I know.
You'd almost have to honestly, if this were the only case of the Kinderhook Blob, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Oh, we wouldn't be talking about
Oh,
this.
yeah.
That
no,
something
no,
like
no.
went, "What's up?"
Yeah, I know.
Then this would never have made an article.
And goes back in.
Yeah.
That's
And
weird.
as we
No.
said so many times before, it is the human mind's unerring desire to string together disparate ideas into a cohesive whole that first makes all sorts of technology and wonderful things possible, but also makes strings of
Well,
asinine
yes.
conspiracies
Of course.
seem plausible when
Yeah.
they're not. But for the sake of argument, let's just assume that this is the first sighting of it and move on, because it is the next sighting that's actually more interesting, because this takes us to at least slightly more anatomical accuracy, even though it's still vague as fuck, and that is a big white blob.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
that was gliding in an unnatural fashion, which I still love.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
All right. So
Yeah.
they see it.
I still don't know what
it's
that means,
an
but-
unnatural fashion down a hill.
Yes. Toward the person.
Toward the
so not trying to
person.
make itself away
Right.
like a lot of animals. I mean, besides rabbit animals, most animals are not interested in
Right.
getting close
What are the
to
odds it
people.
was just a big fucking boulder? It was just fucking rolling. It's like,
Serious.
fuck you, no way.
Yeah. Seriously.
a lovely
Really?
white rock.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that. Totally.
I just,
Oh
I mean,
my
it's
God.
gliding unnaturally. So what was the next one?
The next one is the same
the
guy
tree.
with his friend, and they saw.
Oh, they came back and
the
then
guy saw the
then
big
it was
white
in
blob.
the tree. Okay,
Yep, it's
all
floating
right.
in the trees, and again, that's just a really vague thing.
Yeah, I don't know
That
a white
could-
shape.
what that
Okay,
means.
So
A
that
white
could be
shape.
the seagull in the shawl, as we call that.
So rolling down the hill could be the methane foam fiction monster.
Right.
And then in the trees,
Or boulder.
it's Old Lady McCleary's white sheets.
yeah, I don't know
with
about
4
methane. I don't know
seagulls.
about methane foam rolling down a hill.
I don't believe that's the case.
I have experience with methane.
What foams
and
up water where it
methane
stays consistent?
or air. Methane or air
but can it
does.
survive beyond a lake very long?
I've never seen it at a place that might employ me. I've never seen it out of a tank. It's not like we're walking and we're like, oh, hey, look, there's a big methane thing in
But
the yard.
we've all
Like,
seen
it's never happened.
piles of shit
Ever.
foam on the shore of our local lake.
Right, right.
But that's
right.
not a cohesive shape, and
That's not gonna
I've
make
certainly
it-
never seen it roll like a fucking tumbleweed.
No, that's not going to get out
No,
into
I know.
the woods.
I don't believe it is any of that. I'm
No.
trying to put my skeptic
No.
hat on, but I honestly don't think it is lake foam.
No,
or,
it's-
or seagulls
no, I
and
don't.
laundry.
Methane dissipates
Seagulls
pretty
and laundry
quickly.
is funny.
So
It probably is. They're like
yeah.
laughing somewhere.
A bunch of seagulls.
Seagulls and laundry.
We
Oh,
fucking
fuck's
got him. And they laughed at
Joe-
evilly.
Yeah. Okay.
So it can glide on the ground.
Okay.
It can float amongst the
Cool.
limbs of the high trees.
Yeah, I don't know what that even
It
means.
can peek behind a tree,
Okay.
and it can third and finally tramp down a hill,
Tramp.
making noise where it floats more than it walks, but it still is occasionally walking.
Okay.
And it is basically arched dome, a bell shape.
Right. Or,
or
Mother
it is
Mary.
the Lord Jesus' mother coming down to say,
There's
put out your campfire.
I know.
Don't touch yourselves in that tent, boys.
There's no message though, so I don't believe it is. I don't believe it is the Virgin Mary.
Yeah,
Come to
I
save
think
us
if
all.
Mary shows up, doesn't she normally have like a message or
Always.
like demand?
No, it's like
Yeah, my
peace
son
to the world.
says,
Yeah.
"Cut
Yeah.
your shit."
Yeah, knock it
And-
off, be cool, nukes are bad. See ya.
That's
Yeah.
pretty
Outta
much
here.
the
She
line.
books. She books. She
She's
bails.
kind of a lot like aliens. Like they deliver the same thing.
Oh, are you drawing a
Nuclear
parallel?
warnings. Oh yeah.
Have you watched that documentary on Amazon Prime?
I have not.
Me neither.
Okay.
Just making sure we're
We've
on the same
achieved
page.
nothing
Wow,
with this
I know,
conversation. I don't even know what you're
I'm
talking
pretty sure
about.
I saw a documentary. I don't know if it was on Amazon Prime or not about like Jesus and Mary and like aliens.
I do have a book titled something like
Jesus.
Jesus Drives a Flying Saucer or God
I heard
God
of that
pilots a
book.
UFO.
Or,
I bought it at a fucking Goodwill place when I was shopping with you, Chris, years ago.
Well, we did
at
have
Volunteers
that.
of America.
Oh
I found
God.
that
Okay.
fucking copy
Do you
of
remember
that. I had to buy it.
During RoboFlowers, it was like, does the devil pilot a UFO?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Absolutely.
So there you go. So
He
it's the
might.
All right,
devil
so
or Jesus?
is it satanic? Is it
No.
Saint Lee?
No.
Is it foam? Is it fucking
Is it foam?
rogue birds
I know.
and fucking
I have trouble with those
pillowcases?
with those two. I still feel like
Yeah.
they're different. My mind wants to say they're different things.
I'm more inclined to think
they're
that
just
because-
white. That's all the only thing I have in common.
There's nothing. There's nothing to it. Like there's no interaction.
Here's
really.
what I'm interested about in the Scott and Lee case, and that is, it implies a humanoid shape. I know
Right.
Scott
That's
saw it
right.
as a bell shape, and that Lee was more inclined to think in terms of
But that's still a
cognitive
shape.
scene of it, but
They're
it's still
shapes.
shape.
Yeah.
Now they don't say face. Never is there a face or facial features or eyes or a
Right.
mouth
Yeah.
ever
Right.
mentioned, nor are there limbs.
No, right.
Ever mentioned, or tendrils, or any other sort of appendages that might help it get along.
That's true.
It is either an amorphous blob or a ghost-like thing. It seems to undulate, so it doesn't seem to have. I think we can, I guess, rule out a skeleton for the most part because
Yeah,
it seems to be
safely.
moving
There's no
Yeah, I
skeleton.
don't think it's undead.
like
Yeah.
an amorphous sort of blob
Right.
would, I guess. Now the real question then it comes to: is it animate or inanimate?
Mm.
It seems to be going towards people, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the case. It could just be going in a direction and people are there.
Right.
Well, yeah.
That doesn't
See,
it doesn't seem to
there's
have
no-
any intent except when it peeked behind a tree, seemingly curious at the kid's activities.
Well-
I know
Right.
I'm reading a lot into it. I agree.
Yeah, but
I'm
I
first to
mean-
admit.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing that implies some sort of sentience.
There's no real interaction.
Well, the kids booked the second they saw it.
Right. Well, but just because they saw it move from behind the tree, it wasn't like, "Hey kids, what's up?" And then they're like, "Fuck."
Yeah, they
and
just
then
assumed
ran.
it was towards them.
Yeah. So, but there's no real interaction. Like, there's no real like up close interaction with it. It's just kind of there, and people are observing it.
And then
Yeah. What if it's just taking a piss and its arm moved?
Yeah.
That's right.
Like,
it
just
could be behind a tree,
Just
relieving
because
itself,
they saw something behind a tree, they just assumed it was an act toward them.
but
Right.
we don't know.
We don't know.
Exactly.
But-
So.
That brings us to another thing. Not to interrupt you,
Right.
which I kind of pointed out at the end of the article, and that is the most intriguing question regarding this seemingly innocuous creature is why does it seem to inspire a nearly universal reaction of terror in all those who have seen it?
Is it just because these people think they either think they are seeing or they're actually seeing something so unnatural that they're just like, "Oh shit," and they got to get out of there?
That is absolutely the most easy, valid theory
Yeah.
for it, and probably the one I subscribe to. But there's also this sense that if I saw something undulating in white, I would probably stop and be curious, and I would look again, and I would look
Yeah.
again. Now, if it was coming towards me and it was floating above the ground or occasionally touching the ground
Right.
and moving in a way that was so unnatural that it just made me feel like fucking icky in the guts,
Right.
then I might fucking book.
Yeah.
But at first, I think I would definitely be intrigued. And it seems like intrigue doesn't last very long in any of these eyewitnesses. It is almost immediately usurped by outright fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, sure.
again, what you say, I agree with. Seeing something that seems so unnatural to what you expect to see in the fauna typically found in the woods of fucking New York would be enough to instigate that. But also, is there something like a lot of old Loch Ness monster sightings? People talked about something unnatural and totally ugly about it. Like especially if they were on a boat and saw it close, there's something that just inspired raw terror that went beyond just curiosity about a biological oddity
Because-
or fear of something that large being in the water near them.
Right, and because it's something that you're just not used to ever seeing.
And so
it
you're right.
creates
Well,
Yeah,
terror.
but there's
Yeah,
always the
that's valid.
surprise. I mean,
Right.
shit can be terrifying that isn't. If you're just in the woods or when you're camping or whatever, and all of a sudden you just
And
turn
there's
around,
this
there's a fucking
white-
black bear there.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
you're gonna get that feeling in your gut of
Yeah.
just like holy shit.
No,
But
you-
that's
you
at
do-
least the
you do.
kind of fear you can understand. Because that's the kind of fear that you can
There's
say
a
bears are carnivores.
primordial fear, yeah.
Sure,
I'm in danger
but
of
if
being
there's
prey.
still just some crazy shit there, I think that might kind of get
I'm wondering
that
though,
knee-jerk reaction
yeah,
at
if
least.
because it is this white blob, amorphous, phantasmagoric type thing. If people see it and they instinctually understand, like this is not
Right.
of this earth or this is not normal, that this is what causes complete
Or
terror.
could it be, and again, I'm more inclined to subscribe to what you just said, Mark, but could it be that we have instincts? We have natural fears of things like spiders and snakes that we don't
Right.
necessarily have to learn. Not all of us have them, obviously. I got a little thing about spiders. I like snakes. But generally speaking, we have a natural fear of things that we know are venomous or dangerous even without knowing. The way
Right.
they move, the way they do something, the way they just are, instills an instinctive terror. Could there be something about this that is kind of spreading that sort of feeling because
Right.
we intuitively recognize not just that it's utterly foreign and bizarre, but that there's intrinsically something very dangerous about this thing?
Yeah, totally. I can totally see that.
Again, I'm more inclined to think what you guys are saying. It's just how weird it is strikes you
Sure.
as disturbing and you want to get the fuck out of Dodge. That makes perfect sense. But I just can't help but think like everyone's first reaction, they see it, the kids don't talk about, oh, when we stayed and we looked and we tried
No,
to see it and
everyone's
played
terrified.
like peekaboo and it's bouncing
Yeah.
back and forth. Then stepped out and we got scared and ran.
Right.
It's like I saw it, she saw it, we're out. Guy saw it, is out. Comes back with his friend, they're armed to the teats with fucking farm implements.
Yeah.
They run away the second they see it again. And the two kids that were camping, they see it, they're out, pack up camp and go.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, all of that can be explained just by this is weird and I don't want to be here, but it also seems like it's running deeper.
Yeah, you just don't know.
Or not.
No.
You
I mean,
just don't know.
it
Yeah,
could be.
I don't know.
I mean, it could be. I think as humans, I think part of our evolution is avoiding shit that we think might kill us.
Always.
Well, that's
So-
how we evolved.
Exactly.
If we didn't do that, we wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
No.
So
We wouldn't
I
be
mean,
here.
maybe this is one of those things where you just see something and you're like,
Is it an active threat
Fuck it.
yeah,
to us as a species?
Yeah. Well, especially if it's something that weird and it's moving toward you.
Right.
Even if it was moving in a direction kind of toward you,
right.
you would probably book.
Oh, it definitely freaked
Especially
me
in the
out.
last one, if it looked like if all of a sudden you just turn around, there's apparitions like
And that one seems to be like full on floating.
Yeah, so it's like,
I'm thinking like
I'm
2 or
here.
3 feet above the ground, but I have no way of knowing that.
Right. Yeah, I don't
But
know
the other
either.
one seemed to be no, it had to be a little closer because it's occasionally stepping on the ground too and making a hell of a lot of noise when it's doing it.
Tramping.
Which
A good old
implies
tramping.
this is interesting. It implies weight. Everything
Yeah.
else we've seen, especially when we think of traditional physics, if something can glide or float, it is
It's
virtually
not-
weightless.
Yeah.
The fact that this thing made such a ruckus when it did occasionally step,
Right.
it implies at least some sort of girth and
Yeah. Well, I just
something
think
substantial.
I think the
Yeah.
word glide is used in a not normal way, because you can say, like, look at those ice skaters just gliding across. Clearly, they have weight.
Yeah.
They weigh 180 pounds. They're just
Right.
gliding across the ice. So when you use the word glide, to me, it just implies
I'm
it is
thinking-
able to navigate.
Yeah, I'm thinking
in a
like,
way that
like
you're just not
Marty
used to.
McFly on a hoverboard.
That's
Glide.
See, that's what you were picturing. That's not what I was
no,
picturing.
Chris
That's
is
what I'm
actually
picturing.
talking, making contact with the ground, and I understand that, especially for the time when the first unnamed dude who was walking through the woods saw it undulating down the hill. Kind
Yeah.
of.
Right.
Where that doesn't count is when it's up amongst the tree branches. That's
Yep.
clearly that's not just hovering. That's active flight.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Or
Well,
when it's
and
a
when
bell.
it was when it was it could count actually when it was a bell too. When it was a bell / St. Mary,
Right.
that could also be partially on the ground, and they thought it was floating because it moved in such an odd up and down sort of way.
Yep.
But the only time that it might not be making contact with the ground is when it's in the treetop. So Chris actually makes a point. When it's behind the tree, it's on the ground. When it's coming down the hill, it's likely on or very near the ground. When the bells of St. Mary's are heading towards the fucking camping kids, it's also making enough sound on the ground to imply that it might be on the ground.
Yeah.
The only time it seems not to be that
right.
is when it's flying, but at least
And it
but
could
it
be
still seems to move where it's not really enslaved to gravity.
Right.
Yeah. And it still could be. I mean, if you just see something that's still stuck to the thing moving in a weird way, you can easily say it looks like it's flying, like it's floating.
Sure.
It's moving in a way that it shouldn't be.
We have to,
So-
I guess, remain. This is one of those really bizarre cases that you'd hope that there'd be more substantiation. You really hope that there had been a sighting in the post-smartphone era where motherfuckers could have shot it, but unfortunately, the last
Yeah.
known sighting was at least 78, if not 64. I would love to have seen some legitimate eyewitness sketches. I've done a couple of my own artistic interpretations, like I always do, but it's based loosely. I did one that was it peeking behind a tree where it's sort of an amorphous blob, and I did one where it's more ghost-like and floating amongst trees. But it's still my interpretation based on very scant eyewitness reports.
That's right.
So it's one of those cases where it's so vague that it really is either something really extreme and exciting, like an unknown biological entity that either hails from Earth or the depths of Kinderhook Lake or somewhere that can move in a strange way and kind of inspires terror if by virtue of its very foreignness or something inherently malevolent. Or it is just a series of really natural things like fucking plastic bags floating around a fucking parking lot in a windstorm, but just put together in a way that just deceived people that are completely dismissible if you had a chance to look at it with a clean, clear,
Sure.
skeptical eye.
Right.
Sure.
And there's nothing really in between.
So, hoax-wise, I think we covered the seagull.
Yeah,
Well,
rogue
I don't
laundry.
know. Somebody
laundry.
would hoax it with a seagull.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be a hoax.
It's
That to
not
me,
a hoax.
that's an accident.
Yeah.
That is a complete laundry line
It's
accident.
like a hoax of nature.
A hoax
Right?
of
A hoax
nature.
of nature.
Well
yeah,
done.
because I don't think anyone's
Oh,
going to
right.
plan that out.
Coming out next year, your book.
Misidentified
Yeah.
or,
Hoax of nature.
or
Yeah.
completely misunderstood.
Right after the hidden war.
Methane gas and whatnot. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Sea foam.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's,
no,
So-
upstate New York lake sea foam.
Yeah, not really.
I just don't see
No.
it.
Well,
Now, we all agree that they saw something.
It really seems like they did.
So, should we try to like put this into maybe a little tiny box? Maybe an alien box? Maybe a zoology box? Maybe
Alien
an
ma-
interdimensional box?
That's fucking. That's always a possibility. But that again, that is like calling. You might as well open up the sorcerer's box.
Well, the
at
only
that
reason
point,
I bring that up is because
No.
in the same area we have UFO and we have Sasquatch.
you
And
know,
weird white
well,
blobs.
it would be nice to find out how close this is to the Watertown vortices.
Oh, yeah, it would be.
And who's to say that's the only place where vortexes exist in New York?
No, I'm sure that
well, no,
there's-
it's a ley line supposedly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like they just.
So I wonder if
If
Kinderhook
you-
lies on a ley line, maybe.
I mean, if that's the explanation for it, as far as like a ley line being some form of like form of transportation. I don't necessarily understand how it works.
Oh no!
Well,
none of us do.
I tried to look into it.
I don't even think the
and, like,
people that claim they know how it works really
like,
know how it works.
There's
Yeah, it's never a
what are those-
clear-cut explanation.
What are those
Yeah.
stuff called? What are those?
Oh,
weird
the
stuff?
dowsing rods.
Yeah, there's a dowsing involved, and
Oh,
then there's
dowsing
like
your way to a vortex?
You can douse apparently for
I don't
anything.
know, man.
Like, I've looked at this. People douse for like
water, charcoal,
snails,
Doritos,
clams.
I would totally douse for Doritos.
Deals at TJ Maxx
douse-
and
douse-
fucking other places.
no,
Like,
so, yeah,
Oh.
dowsing
Yeah.
for deals.
I'm dowsing for deals at fucking Marshalls. So, actually, Bed Bath and Beyond. So, that's where I go for all my deals anyway.
Nice plug.
I don't necessarily know if the ley lines are necessary. I don't think that that's an intricate part of something being interdimensional or something that's traversing time and
Oh,
space.
not at all. I
Okay,
think
I
we
just wanna
can,
put it out there.
we
All
can
right.
all concede that we are not experts. Lee.
When I say interdimensional, all I'm saying is that I'm not saying it's necessarily things coming through a portal to interact with us, but thus that possibly maybe we're seeing a glimpse into a different reality or just a different dimension or existence of Earth. Not
Right.
necessarily. There doesn't have to be an interaction. It doesn't have to be like, "Hey, I'm a fucking 6-armed seagull, motherfucker," and they're all excited. And I'm just saying it could just be
Jesus
anything you
Christ.
see that this might be like a glimpse into a different reality.
It's a possibility, but again, that instantly invokes ideas, like I say, of magic or things like that.
Right,
I'm
right.
not saying it's not possible. I certainly think
And
that
I'm definitely not fighting for
there
it
are
at
other
all.
dimensions.
I've already
and-
given up as a
and that
matter of
there's
fact.
probably living things in said dimensions, and that possibly they're able to traverse the boundaries. But going there right out the gate is the equivalent of just saying,
Right.
"Wizards did it."
You're
and,
right.
You know, moving
you're
on.
right. You're
I
right.
don't want to do that. I'm always more inclined to think biologically.
Okay.
So my thought is this: if it is a traditionally water-bound entity,
I like this idea.
I don't know if Kinderhook is a glacial lake, like so many of the
Right.
lakes in New York State.
Right.
How old it is, and
Is
you
there
know,
definitely a lake there?
well, according to the words I read
Okay,
and then
I'm-
reported back.
I'm-
I mean,
I'm
I didn't
just-
go and stake it out. I didn't
According to the
confirm it.
words he read.
Yes.
Son
Thank
of
you,
a-
Chris.
son of a
I'm just
bitch.
making sure.
I didn't Google Earth.
Okay.
I want to think that maybe it's either something from the lake
It could
that
be.
managed to come out. I mean, because if amorphous, undulating things live, on the bottom of lakes or oceans and kind of can squeeze into cracks and crevices to hide and don't really need to deal with, the light of day very often, snag its prey any way it can, or maybe are filter feeders,
Yeah.
then these things could survive. The problem with that theory is, as much as I'm inclined to believe things like that almost certainly live in the oceans and very likely live in some of the deeper, older lakes, how would that be able to move on land? Things that are waterbound like that are not necessarily really super mobile on land.
No, not normally.
Unless
but
it came out to die, and it was just this weird. Maybe it's like these things die. They crawl into the woods. They have one last fucking rampage of glory. Eat 3 squirrels, die and dissolve, and that on a handful of occasions people
Yeah.
have seen them. But that doesn't explain why they're flying amongst fucking trees.
if you're right, if they
Right.
indeed are flying amongst the trees,
I can't come up with a theory that could make me
that could
go,
be one
what the fuck?
situation of a rogue fucking pelican.
Ha!
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
None of that helps or hurts us.
So-
I can't fucking come up with a single good idea of what this
no,
fucking thing
there's
could be.
not. Especially that. I mean, it could be 2 different things.
It could be.
So
It could be 3
at this
different
point,
things.
I don't really know what to. It's just
Yeah.
something
Man.
happened and. A white thing behind a tree, then a boulder, then a seagull,
Yeah.
and then ghosts. All
There
right,
you go.
see you next week.
And then there's a message from the Mother Mary or the bell.
Or it could be a haunting.
That
I
was
mean, that's
ghosts.
something we don't broach very
we don't
often.
ever really, it's funny, we've gotten messages about this, but we don't ever really go into ghost territory.
Well, it's not our strong suit. I've always been a cryptozoologist.
Right.
I am open to the possibility of an infinite universe with infinite possibilities. At the same time, I really try to narrow my scope to biological things
Right.
or mechanical things in terms of UFOs.
So, I mean, classically, wouldn't this fit under like a classic ghost?
No,
well, only the
Sort
very
of.
last.
No,
Only
the,
very
the
last.
last account seems
All right.
like it could.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that was moving wraith-like through the
Right.
trees, and it seemed to
Right.
have like undulating sheet look
All right.
and possibly vaguely humanoid shape,
Right.
or a fucking object that hangs in
So-
a steeple.
I'm going to say
Yeah.
just because, and
But it could be a haunting in the woods.
Right, it could be. It could be. I'm going to take into consideration, and I know that it was taken off the table, but I'm going to take it off the floor and put it back on the table, and say because that there is there's a possible Bigfoot, there's possible UFO sightings. Plus, we have this thing. I'm going to say that this is all possibly connected in some sort of interdimensional menage a trois.
Oh, the super threesome.
I have no evidence for this theory other than you have the 3 separate things in the area at different times, and 2 of those things were spotted by members of the same family.
In paranormal circles, this is a well-known phenomenon called the Kinderhook three-way. And no,
It's the best way to be a
people
farmer.
know about it. Redheaded Bigfoot, particularly, the flying lights, and then you throw the blob in the mix. That's just lube. It's all fun from there on out.
Yeah.
And it's like an orgy on a slip and slide.
So I'm going
during a rave.
So,
Yeah, you're
so
right.
my theory is called the Kinderhook
Three-way.
three-way.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And I think we're all in agreement that must be it.
Yeah, there you go.
But it is strange, though, and obviously, I say this often, but we are going to broach this sometime, the connection, tenuous though it may be, between a lot of UFOs sightings with hairy hominid sightings.
Yeah, it's,
They have indirectly correlated more than a few times, and they have directly correlated a handful of times, which are really intriguing
yeah,
and
totally.
worth investigating. If these 2 things were involved, could it be that the Kinderhook Blob are UFO pilots?
Or just somehow
the
loosely
the leftover of the fuel that gets spilled to Earth that just kind of undulates around until it dissolves like its own contrail or
I see-
something.
I see.
Living fuel.
Living fuel.
Organic alien
man,
fuel.
that's a great fucking theory, Rob.
And maybe the Bigfoot live off it for the first few months while they're here.
God damn it! I wish we had
doing their
evidence to
sabbatical
back
on
this
Earth.
up because that is
That's
fucking awesome.
sabbatical.
Yeah.
Bigfoot sabbaticals. They come from other
Totally.
worlds
Yeah,
to
no.
just commune with the nature of Earth.
Yeah, this is where
and
they hang
meet the
out.
stumps.
Maybe it's not a sabbatical.
and
maybe
hang
it's,
out and do
There you
stump
go.
films.
maybe they're sent here to die. Maybe it's maybe they're prisoners, and maybe this is a fucking.
Could you imagine?
like a death colony?
like the pachyderm,
It's like Highlander 2, the original
the
one.
pachyderm
Oh, yeah.
graveyard where they migrate. I don't know however many miles to die in this one place.
Yeah.
Maybe we are the Bigfoot death planet.
Oh,
Yeah.
it could be.
Good luck.
And the Kinderhook Blob is the corporeal spirit of a Bigfoot before it ascends to the higher plane.
All right.
Via the
There it
UFO.
is. There it is.
Oh, the
I
UFO
like
has to
it.
take it to planet.
It has to take it to
Well,
planet
yeah, that's how you get
afterlife.
off. That's how you
Planet
gotta do it. Yeah.
afterlife.
When
Planet
the
Bigfoot afterlife.
when the big feet die, the UFOs come down and take their souls on to see whoever.
And of course, a mere mortal is going to be terrified when they see an undulating Bigfoot soul.
as we all should be.
Okay.
It just makes sense. Thank God. I was worried we weren't going to nail it. Now I can
We
sleep
nailed
tonight.
it.
We nailed it.
We own it.
Or I think it's just safe to say that, like most things, we have no idea.
We have no fucking clue at all. But it's fun.
We can spin it all we want, but at the end of the day, there's no evidence or theories to really back it up. So I will stick with my interdimensional menage a trois,
Fair
even though
enough.
I have no evidence, but I don't need evidence. You know why? Because this is the internet. So there you go.
You don't need evidence proof.
All right, gentlemen, closing statements.
Sasquatch souls are it.
All right, Chris.
Yeah. Seagulls and boulders.
There you go. Boom. Thank you for joining us for the Kryptonaut Podcast. Be sure to rate and review this show on the iTunes and the Apple Podcast apps. It helps us out greatly. We're on the
Totes.
social medias, the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Facebooks.
Okay.
What happened? Did you stroke?
Be talking to you soon.
Oh, God
Jesus,
damn it.
I know. What the fuck happened?
I just give you a little bit of a pause to be
Oh.
like, well, what are you going to do?
I was so worried.
No,
Are
no,
you gonna
nobody
fill,
knew.
are you going to fill that dead space, or are you going to live in it?
This is why I don't call you when
Jesus
I see a UFO.
Christ,
I'm
dude.
afraid I'll break you.
We'll be talking to you. See ya.
Bye.